Should we move on to one
Let's
of
do an
your
arena.
sports?
Yeah, let's do basketball.
Okay. So this is a good opportunity. Do you want to go first with this one since it's right up your alley? I
Yeah,
want to know what you've picked. This was
yeah.
a hard one because I think this and for me this was the hardest one. I assume for you probably NHL was the hardest one because
Yeah, because I had
they're
no idea.
inside and they're not necessarily either of our
And I
prime
don't watch
sports.
enough hockey. Like
Right.
I can think of watching plenty of NBA games at every
Mhm.
arena. Um, so part of part of this, which maybe is unfair, but part of my deciding on a arena has to do somewhat with the court. So the court matters
Yeah.
because it's just like the general feel of the arena. Um, and so there are, I can talk about this after. There's some that I don't like, and I think it's a mix of the lighting and the court and just the way it all looks when you're watching. Um, so it was really hard for me to pick, but the one I settled on was Wells Fargo, which is the Philadelphia
Really.
76ers
Yeah, that's not bad.
arena. Yeah, it's one of the bigger ones, which isn't necessarily a huge reason I picked it, because the variation in capacity for most of these arenas is really small. Like the
Hmm.
biggest one is 20,000 something, the smallest is 16,000 something. Most of them are in like the 18,000 range. Um, but Wells Fargo is just big. I like the court. I just like how bright it is, and it just something feels great about watching it. I always think like every one of these arenas, you get like you experience it at least watching on TV at its best in the playoffs. Um,
Yeah.
one of the things I wish that they would do still is it used to be they'd put T-shirts on the seats of these
Mm,
during the playoffs, and everybody would wear them.
yeah.
People don't wear them anymore. I don't get why. I went to two playoff games last year for the Celtics. They put T-shirts on every seat. Almost nobody wears the T-shirts anymore.
Wow.
Um, and it just was one of my favorite things to turn on a playoff game and the entire crowd all like being uniform in color, like they're all wearing the same thing. It just made it feel like it just made that playoff feel to me. And I love watching Sixers games there. Obviously, Philly fans also like just are crazy,
Yeah.
and so you get that watching basketball. There's been some amazing games in the Wells Fargo Center as well, which has helped it. But I think there's a layout too. Most arenas are pretty generic, and you have like your lower section. You'll have some sort of like suite in the middle, and then like your upper deck. That's generally how most arenas are.
Hmm.
And I really like it. Looking at pictures, it seems like Philly's lower section seems like it kind of goes farther than others, and I think it just kind of creates like a fishbowl feel that just feels like there's so many people there. Um, like a lot of arenas feel like a bunch of small sections clumped together. I like that in the pictures. It just kind of Philly feels a little different. Like it just feels like there's more people.
Mm.
And when you like look at pictures and get a feel for it, it's not super significant, but I just I like that. And just the look, the layout of the court. I'm just a big fan. So
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Obviously, I can't, criticize too much because I'm not an aficionado, but um, I was kind of clicking on some highlights and yeah, it's a good solid pick. And I think there is something to be said a little bit about some, especially when it's something like this. I think um, not that not history doesn't necessarily matter, but I think there is sort of a different feel when it's one of the kind of like historic NBA teams as opposed
Mhm.
to obviously no disrespect to certain teams, but maybe someone like the Grizzlies where it's a little bit less like
Mhm.
they're a little bit more of a newer team and
Yeah,
you know even though the arenas aren't the same as they were like at the beginning of the NBA, it still maybe sometimes feels like it's a little bit more
yeah,
of that basketball feel at an
yeah,
arena that hosts a more historic team.
yeah.
All right, so my selection, and this we can kind of get into the Los Angeles thing as well. My selection is Madison Square Garden for the NBA, and this was a tough one because I think up until recently, it probably would have been easier for me to choose MSG, but they do have some court designs that are a little odd. I would like if they just went straight up with the traditional Knicks court. It's just I don't know, it's just such a unique um, viewing experience. And so the reason for that, which ties into Los Angeles, is from what I've heard, they have a patent on like this lighting system that basically like highlights the court and makes the stands look darker. And
Hmm.
so the reason that the Clippers and Lakers look different is because the Lakers bought the rights to use that and the
Hmm.
Clippers didn't.
Hmm.
Is that what you've heard as well?
I haven't heard it, but you can notice it. I was going to
Yeah.
say that the
So
biggest
that's
difference
why
in the
which
Clippers
when
is
you
it
hear
feels
that,
so
it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, which is so it's funny. So I was gonna say when it's a very unpopular opinion. My two of my least favorite places to watch on
Are
TV is Lakers
the
and Knicks.
Knicks.
I
Okay.
hate that. I just really don't like the dark
Huh.
feel. And I didn't realize it was like that. But I was gonna say it like the Clippers arena feels so much brighter.
Yeah.
But
So
so you can talk about yeah
I think the reason I like it is because when there's a big shot or something like that. So when I think of Madison Square Garden at its best, I kind of think of like the Carmelo days with the Knicks.
yeah
And
sure
obviously, a lot of people are probably going to go back farther than that. But for me, that's like when the Knicks
sure
have
sure
been the best or the most fun to
yeah
watch. And so I think of some of those big shots, and it's similar for like the Staples Center, but it does. So while you're watching it, it's sort of you're focused on the players, you're focused on the game, and then they hit that big shot, and which ESPN does a great job of this. They do that kind of zoom out where
mm,
you get like the whole view, and you see the people start like standing up and going crazy. And I like that when that shot happens, all of a sudden you become aware of the crowd,
mm,
if that makes sense. Like because they
mm,
do the zoom out and they all stand up and whatever,
yeah
and it's maybe not quite as focused on the court. All of a
yeah
sudden, you get to kind of that the impact of the crowd going crazy is a little bit more sudden and a
hmm
little bit more like surprising, which I think adds to it.
hmm
And then also just kind of not necessarily from a viewing perspective on TV, but when you look at like pictures on Google or whatever, and it's that Knicks court with the Madison Square Garden scoreboard and the iconic roof. I just think that's such a cool
Yeah,
visual.
it's such an iconic
Yeah,
place. I mean, people call like the Mecca of basketball all the time
yeah.
is New York and especially Madison Square Garden. Um, so it is really cool. It just the darkness I've just never liked. I kind of like
Mm.
being able to see the crowd. I like when it's brighter. Um, it's just a more enjoyable watching experience to me. A couple others that aren't on this level, but Golden State, their arena always feels
Mm.
darker to me. Um, or it always did. Chase Center sometimes is better depending on the court design. And the United Center, which is the Bulls,
Yeah.
which is a little different, but those are two that just kind of feel dark, and I don't love it. Um,
I also
then I
don't
go,
love the feel of when the Bulls play at home. I don't know what
yeah,
it is about. It's not
it's
necessarily the darkness, but it's just I don't
right.
know.
It's something I don't love. I can't explain it. I will say this maybe is unfair to say, but I equate it to watching Madison Square Garden games. Most stadiums have like music that they play during the game,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's like a defense, there's someone on some sort of like um not piano, but like synth, and they play like
Yeah.
notes and it goes with. I find the Madison Square Garden like music, whatever you want to call it, incredibly annoying. It bothers me like crazy. It makes me want to
Uh,
watch games on mute every time I watch the Knicks play.
Maybe
Um,
that's an advantage I have then, because I don't have any
yeah,
association with it.
and I have no idea if it's one of those things that most people probably don't even notice it as they're watching. But it was one of those like I noticed it one time and it just started to annoy me so much that now every time I watch the Knicks play, I have to like fight to just not get mad about it.
Yeah.